Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast live here on Friday, November the 15th. I am your host, JT Ruhnke, writer and reporter here at Broadway Sports Media. You can follow me on Twitter at JT_Ruhnke, and also on this Hot Read Happy Hour Friday from yet another different location is my co-host here, the wonderful Stoney Keeley, the editor-in-chief of Sobros Network, 1/3 of Football and Other F Words, and co-writer over at stackingtheinbox.com. Stoney, where are you coming to us from this time, and how are you doing on this Friday?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a hot read happy hour. I'm drinking wine out of a styrofoam hotel room cup. I'm in the corner of our room here. We're down in Memphis, Tennessee. This has been a fantastic experience. Our resident film critic at Sobros Network, Brandon Vick, and I have come down to cover the Indie Memphis Film Festival. We were in town last night. We've already seen a couple of films, as you can hear Brandon sneezing in the background. We're having a big old time down here, man. I have almost forgotten that the Titans play a game in which they're gonna probably get killed on Sunday. So I'm living life down here, my man.
Hey, and that's great. You know, Jake in the comments here saying Stoney coming to us live from a Red Roof Inn.
It's not the Red Roof Inn.
But it looks like any other generic hotel room for
Yes.
sure. And I commend you for trying to make it look as nice as it does behind you. Just a reminder, if you are joining us live today on this Friday here on X or Facebook, do us a favor and head on over to the Broadway Sports Media or 440 Sports YouTube channels where you can join Jake in the comments here, because we're talking about, we're going to talk about a couple of heavyweight bouts where we don't think they're exactly heavyweights. The first one, of course, if you're watching this on Friday or listening to it afterwards on Saturday, so you'll know the results. But Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight tonight. I remember hearing about this way back in like June, and I thought it already happened, but I guess it got delayed, and now it's tonight, and it's free on Netflix. So I guess this is a big thing, and I tweeted out earlier today when this live stream went out that I said, I think Mike Tyson most likely just knocks Jake Paul out of the ring. At least that's what I hope happens. I don't know. Do you have a dog in the fight here at all, Stoney, tonight?
I'm really rooting for Mike Tyson, especially, they do the weigh-in thing and Jake Paul steps on his toe and then Mike Tyson slaps him, and it looked pretty awesome. Like, it looked like just a harmless slap from Mike Tyson. Like, he exerted no energy, but it absolutely rocked Jake Paul. And Mike Tyson's up on stage just slinging his nuts around. I don't know if I can say that or not, but I love the energy. I'm here for it, man. I hope that he spins his head entirely around his body tonight.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. It's going to be good one way or the other, and I think I'm starting to realize how I'm going to enjoy this fight tonight, and that's by going to maybe trying to make a quick trip before the fight tonight over to our wonderful sponsor, Sinkers Beverages, and their sister store, BLUEGRASS Beverages in Henderson. Thank you show here. If you're a fan of 440 Sports, you know them for sure. But if you're watching for the first time, happy to introduce you. I know as Easton Freeze thought he was doing everyone a favor on Twitter earlier today, saying the fight on Netflix starts at 7:30, but there are fights before that. So it's looking like that the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight will start around 10:30. To which I retweeted that and I said, breaking. Man discovers how every single fight known to man ever to exist works. More at 7. We'll find out if he learns this more along the way, which he took issue with because he was doing a public service announcement. And I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I guess he's trying to help, but like maybe this is a bad take by me. But like, if you don't know that's how like a fight works, like, like I don't know what you're expecting. Like, that's been the norm for so long. And I mean, if you're just tuning in for the Jake Paul Mike Tyson thing, like, you probably can go to bed, watch it first thing in the morning and not worry about it. But I do think, watching some of the undercards is fun because they're less experienced fighters, and that's where you get to probably see the knockouts. Yeah, unfortunately, I think tonight we're going to see like Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, like, go the full, distance. Nobody's going to
Yeah.
really, do anything. And then it's going to be a decision at the end there. I don't even know if it's a real sanctioned fight, but like Eddie here, as he says, man, I hope, but he's 60 fighting a 25-year-old. And this is the big thing, right? It's like, if Mike Tyson wins against Jake Paul, people are going to be like, well, of course Jake Paul lost. It's Mike Tyson. But if Jake
Mhm.
Paul wins, it's going to
Mhm.
be like, well, of course Jake Paul win. He's 60. Like of course Mike
Convenient.
Tyson was never going to win. So I hope Mike Tyson really wins in dominant fashion just to like keep that alive. And I really do hope it. I don't really know anything out about this besides like it's happening tonight. And I saw this slap and whatnot. I hope it's like a legit fight. They put their all into it. I sure hope so. But
I know Mike Tyson's 60, but he's got that like tiger's blood flowing through his vein. Like there is like pure hate in his fists. And I think I don't know, man. Like I'm kind of here for it. I kind of wish we had gotten. I know he's done some pretty aggressive things and the training videos have been awesome to watch, but I kind of wish we would have gotten like I want to eat his children Mike Tyson for this fight, because that Mike Tyson is just ruthless. And if that Mike Tyson shows up tonight, well then I think age ain't going to be nothing but a number.
yeah, I agree there. But if that does happen, I think no matter who wins this fight or who knocks out who or whatever, it's not going to be the biggest knockout this weekend in sports, because we do have a Titans game to talk about where they're going up against the Minnesota Vikings, which I also tweeted out. I think this is going to be an even bigger and harder knockout for the Titans than what we're going to see tonight in the Tyson and Jake Paul fight, because I think when you look at it from head to toe, on paper, off paper, this Minnesota Vikings team, even though Sam Darnold throws 3 picks last week and they get out of Jacksonville with an ugly, ugly win, 12-7 over Mac Jones-led Jacksonville Jaguars squad. This is a Minnesota Vikings team that is simply outmatched. I don't think this Titans team is anywhere close to being prepared to take them on personnel wise. And maybe that I don't know if you share the same sentiments there, Stoney. What is your 10,000 foot view on this matchup this weekend?
I just think it's a horrible matchup. I think it's a horrible matchup for Will Levis and the Titans offense. This Brian Flores led defense for the Vikings. To me, it's the best defense in football. And I hear your opinions about the Chargers, the Steelers, the Broncos, even. But for me, the way the Minnesota Vikings defense is playing right now is just like controlled frenzy, controlled chaos. And I think the matchup is incredibly difficult. They blitz more than anybody in the league. I think it's something like 47. I've got it written down. 46.7% blitz rate, 50.4 blitz rate against the pass, 38.8% blitz rate against the run. Both are first in the NFL. And you have a quarterback who we've been critical of because of his inability to really detect pressure coming from outside of his periphery. So this matchup just screams difficulty for Will Levis from a processing aspect, from a pocket awareness, pocket feel aspect, that I think it could get really ugly the way this defense is built, going against a Titans offense that is kind of struggling still to gel. Signs of life, progression. I've been on that for a couple of weeks now, but I think the matchup specifically with this Minnesota team that we can dig into a little deeper, cursory overview, it's just a terrible matchup for this Titans offense. And I think it's one that Minnesota can exploit to really, like you said, deliver those body blows, deliver that knockout to this Titans team.
Yeah, I do. When you look at just the difference, like you can look at what the Tennessee Titans defense is ranked first overall in total defense, even though that doesn't really mean much, because when you look at
Yeah.
it a little bit deeper, you look at what this Vikings team is, and you really can look at their more advanced metrics and see that they should technically, I think, be one of the top defenses. Under Brian Flores this year, they are ranking first in EPA per play on defense, second in defensive success rate, third in EPA per drop pack on defense, and first in EPA per rush, especially against this Tennessee Titans line, which maybe correct me if I'm wrong while I'm saying this, if you can go back and think, but with the news that that Leroy Watson will not play this week.
Oh
And
boy.
spoiler alert, NPF will get the start once again at right tackle. This is yet this might be have we had just consecutive weeks all season where there's been a different set of like, I guess in the first like 3-ish weeks, I feel like it was pretty set in stone, the front five. But like since MPF got benched in the Colts game, maybe week 6, was that the Colts game? Was it
around there? Yeah,
somewhere around there. Since then, the Titans have not had a cohesive unit. Like they have not had the same unit go into a game healthy or as the starters in this season here. And as Eddie says in the comments, Freaky Watson threw out his back for being too freaky, I guess. So
bad news for the Freak Squad.
Yeah, when you talk about a team that is just being relentless on the pass rush, and you talk about a quarterback who this has been talked about, and I think good friend of the show, former host Easton Freeze said it great. Like it feels like Will Levis at times has object permanence, where it's like if he doesn't see the person, it's not real. It doesn't matter. As soon as I step up in the pocket here, they no longer exist.
Yeah,
and that sometimes that may work. Maybe he's relying a little bit too much on his offensive line to continue to drive the play and finish the play out. But we have not seen that happen. And so that's something we asked Nick Holtz yesterday, the offensive coordinator of this Titans team. We talked to him yesterday and we asked him about Will Levis's return to the offense and his performance in that game, and especially on the sacks in that game. And so here's what he had to say about Will Levis's pocket management and how many of the sacks were really on him.
So there's a couple ones that, we take 7 sacks, it's on everybody. So there's a couple where he knows that ball's got to come out. Now, the 2 of the ones at the end of the game, there's a 3rd and extra long, and he kind of climbs up in the pocket. That's just kind of a bad situation that you never want to be put in. But there's another 1 or 2 in there that he wishes he had back, and there's another 1 or 2 that the line and the receivers wish they had back where they're getting open. But to your original question of, it's all situational. 1st and 2nd down, we can't be taking sacks. 3rd down, there's a chance that you can extend the play and things like that. But we need to stop being behind the chains on 3rd down. Because if we keep getting these 3rd and longs, that's where all these teams, the last week the Chargers, and especially this week going forward the Vikings, if you're in 3rd and long, you're in a bad place. So that's really where the decision making and understanding the situation's got to kind of improve for all of us.
And I really think when you listen to his answer where we cannot be in these 3rd and longs, you really don't want to be in 3rd and longs against any NFL team in the league, but especially this Minnesota team. But at the same time, it hasn't been that much on Will Levis in some of these areas. You look at how many penalties they continue to rack up by this offensive line, shooting themselves in the foot with the false starts and holds that puts them in that hold. It puts them in that hole. And so, like, I get what he's trying to say there, where it is situational, but I think what it comes down to this week, because I do think both of us don't really see a chance for Will Levis to maybe carry this team. But if he were to carry this team this week in the one universe, the Doctor Strange 2,999 universes, it doesn't work, but the one where it does, he's got to be efficient on 1st and 2nd downs. He has to be recognizing the situation there, and they need to be moving the chains a lot more than they do at the rate they are right now. And we'll talk a little bit in a second about how I think the Titans are getting to a point where they're doing that a lot more efficiently. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what Will Levis is doing in the pocket.
Forgive me if I don't have the most up-to-date information. Have they said why Leroy Watson is inactive on Sunday? It's not injury related, is it?
I do believe it is injury related. I can check real quick. I believe it's a foot injury.
Just wondering. I feel like the penalties are a huge issue with him. We talked about it on Tuesday, how he put this team in 3rd and 21. He put this team in 3rd and 26, and it might just be a point where they're like, hey, against this particular defense, this particular week, I'd rather take some of the other right tackles with their warts.
I was gonna say Eddie wasn't just kidding there. It is a back injury for Leroy Watson.
Okay. Sorry, I thought we were making jokes.
No, I guess since it is a back injury, it technically couldn't be a joke. It could be a real thing there, but it is a back injury for him.
But my larger point being, like, the penalties from Leroy Watson could be a huge liability against this particular defense that basically just feeding into their ability to tee off with a piece like Jonathan Grenard, who's having a pretty good season, pretty good pass rusher there. Anytime they get that matchup against the right tackle, if they're scheming it up, if there's, they're watching the tape and they see that matchup, it's something that they could exploit, and the penalties absolutely make it worse. So I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah, and what you bring up there, like the guys that they have on this defense, Jonathan Grenard. We've heard Ivan Pace's name a couple times this week, a guy who we still
leading
cannot
tackler.
understand why he was not drafted, and he was gifted to the Minnesota Vikings for free when the Titans could have had him in the 7th round instead of Colton Dowell, in the 6th round instead of a Jalen Duncan, could have signed him. But I guess the team liked Monty Rice instead. So that's what you got to live with last year. But before we get into maybe that entire deep dive there and my frustration with that, here's what Nick Holtz had to say about the Minnesota defense as a whole.
They're as disciplined of a group as we've seen. So they are going to try. You watch a lot of teams, they keep kind of chasing. There's a balance of chasing the looks that they're doing and then trying to get into your checks or whatever the blitz looks that they're giving you. And they run out play cover 2 or they run out plays, other things. They know their system inside and out. So if you're late on a progression, if you're not, eyes aren't in the right spot, they will make you pay. And they've done, Harrison Smith has got, as many turnovers as anybody in the last handful of years. But that's been the key for them is there are no free runners. If you watch their tape, there's not guys running wide open all over the field. They are very sound, they're disciplined, and their eyes are always in the right spot. And I think that's the best compliment you can give to a defense is you don't sit there and go, okay, we can expose them on this. So that's really where their biggest issue for us is.
They are a disciplined group. It's a group, just like we talked about last week, you cannot make a lot of mistakes against because they will make you pay. We watched last week, even though Will Levis didn't really make a lot of mistakes, this is a group that is not going to give you a lot in terms of an edge. And so when you go down early in that game and you can't keep up and you got to start throwing it down the field and being a little more loosey-goosey with the ball, like that's where this defense is going to get you, and why I think that this game could get really out of hand. While we were listening to that clip, I just went back and I was curious because you talk about the penalty situation for the Titans offensive line and like trying to trying to mitigate those issues. Well, you look at a guy like Leroy Watson, who has been a penalty machine early and often this season. I believe the Titans have, I think I saw this number because it's a nice number. I think they have 69 penalties on the year. Is where I saw that stat. Maybe wrong, but I think I saw a tweet somewhere where someone quote tweeted it and did say nice to that number. So that's why it's stuck in my head. But you look at what MPF has done in his, so he did play in week 7 as well. I think he got benched in week 7, or was playing in a rotational. Oh, because that's the one where Jalen Duncan went down and MPF had to come back in relief there. So, but in his 5 games played this season for the Titans, he still has 3 penalties so far this season. Like he's not much better. And so when you look at what he's done as a whole, you go back to 2022, he played a total of 937 snaps that year. He had 8 penalties over that 937 snaps. Last year, he played 117 snaps. He had 4 penalties in that 117 snaps. And then in this season, he has totaled 301 total snaps and has 3 penalties in 301 snaps. It's safe to say, like it is a decent bet. I wish you could, we can go on like Bovada or something because I'm sure that's where this line is. MPF to have a penalty this game, like it's kind of like a 1 in 100 so far if you're on pace this season. So like there is a chance that I think this changing MPF into this role, I think really does not change a lot. And I think we can just go with this right now because Paul Kuharsky earlier today reported that with Watson out, NPF starts, and they said Isaiah Prince is now the swing tackle. And Callahan said, not sure yet if they rotate, but a name you don't hear there who has been around in this rotation for the past couple of weeks is John Ojukwu, which I don't know about you, Stoney, but with them saying NPF starts, Isaiah Prince is now the swing tackle as he's now brought up to speed. I mean, how many times can we say this in a season? But I really do feel like if it wasn't dead before, it had now. Like, for some reason, he comes back, but he always comes back. But I think he really is dead this time. Ajukamania just has to be dead, right?
Well, I think the tape probably says Ajukumania is dead. And as much as I like the guy, obviously been leading the bandwagon for Ajukumania, he doesn't strike me as the type of tackle that Bill Callahan and this regime wants after all, because you do see clear problems of resetting his feet, reestablishing his base in pass protection, dropping that anchor foot and just holding ground. I think there are instances where it takes him a few steps to gather himself, to get his hands inside and to really grind down a pass rush. And by the time you've gotten to that point, he's basically bumping into Will Levis, bumping into the quarterback. I think there's also an issue with power when he gets to the second level. I think he has a little more difficulty in sustaining blocks. And one of the key factors in this run game is power, being able to just move a dude, displace a dude. You can't always rely on your hands, your athleticism, lateral movement, those sorts of things, because the Titans just don't run a lot of zone stuff like the previous regime did. So it has been a bit of a surprise to see him struggle in one-on-one situations where a pass rusher knows, like, we can just get our hands inside him and just run down the middle and just completely displace this guy, move him back and get to the quarterback. And I think when you pair the tape, those instances that pop up with what we think theoretically Bill Callahan wants out of this run game, he's a drastically different tackle than J.C. Latham. And I'm not talking about ability, talent, anything like that, because we know J.C. Latham is better than John Ojukwu. I just mean from a style standpoint, they are two different tackles. And I think when you see, like, he couldn't flip that switch and become something in this run game, and he's getting run down at the perimeter, and he can't sustain blocks at the second level, he's not really a dude mover, then I think the writing is kind of on the wall that it's not going to work out. And it's just not, I just don't think it's necessarily a good fit. And he hasn't made the most of the opportunities he's been granted.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And Ed in the comments here says Titans O-line room is like kindergarten. The right tackle who plays nice all week gets a sticker and his favorite toy. And
I like that.
I think it does bring up an interesting point that, like, all these guys feel like they essentially, like, no one really stands out. Like, they all have their flaws, and, like, it's a pick your poison, and all the poisons are pretty bad. Like, there's no poison that is worse than the other. Like, they're all just equally bad. And that's what makes it so frustrating about this right tackle position. And that's going to probably, like, I wouldn't be surprised if on the first drive of the game, like, maybe I'll just call it here. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see, a Tony Pollard run a design screen to a tight end or something, and it is 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, and we see the edge rusher just absolutely bulldoze NPF for a sack, and that's the end of the Titans' first drive this week. Because that, I really just maybe if I am, I'm gonna buy a lottery ticket after that. But, like, that's pretty much to say, like, how I see the first drive going for the Titans here. Sinkers Beverages, our wonderful and amazing sponsor. They have been serving the East Nashville community for over 40 years. They are a 4-time Best of Nashville liquor store of the year. You got to join their in crowd, because as the holidays come up, if you're on that list and you're a very loyal customer and a local customer, they love to help you guys out getting a lot of, hard to find things like certain whiskeys and bourbons and things like that. But you can only be a part of that, that special group if you join their in crowd over there at Sinkers Beverages. Have to give them a follow on Twitter and also Instagram. On Twitter at SinkersBev and on Instagram sinkers.nashville. And if you can't make it out there, like I'm going to try to make it out there tonight, Don't worry, they have you covered because you can simply search Sinkers on Uber Eats and have the booze delivered to you because they drive so you can drink responsibly on this Hot Read happy hour here. Have to give a big shout out as well to their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, who have been serving that location for over 50 years. That is 90 years combined worth of local service in the area here. Thank you once again to Sinkers Beverages and Bluegrass Beverages for sponsoring this show. Okay, Stoney, before we move on here, yes.
Hang on. Can I squeeze something in real quick? Because Brandon's
Sure.
here and he's about to go get us some pizza. So
Okay.
before he leaves, can we address Ed's comment in the chat? He says,
Sure.
Are you listening to this, Brandon? You got it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Conclave movie of the year so far, in my honest opinion. What's Brandon? I haven't seen Conclave yet. I want to. It looks good. Brandon, what's your opinion on Conclave? What was your rating?
I gave it, I think 3.5 or 4 out of 5.
3.5 or 4 out of 5. Good movie. What? Solid film. Ray Fiennes. Phenomenal.
Not the best film of the year.
Not the best. What is the best film of the year so far?
I mean, probably Dune Part 2.
Dune Part 2 is Brandon's best film of the year so far.
I can't argue with that. I
There
guess
you go, Ed.
between a 3.5 and a
comment.
4, 3.75 out of 5 is probably where you have to meet there. Ed also has a comment here because I do think that this is an interesting point to this game. Ed here says, is this a 40 carry running back game? Also like Levis using his legs. I do think that was a healthy implementation to the offense last week. The things where we saw Will Levis have designed runs really worked against against a Chargers defense who, much like the Minnesota, has a lot of looks locked down, and you have to get creative by using your legs. And I think this is another instance where we could see some more designed plays to Will Levis, but also even past that, the running game has to be part of the utmost priority in this game, because the way to keep pace with the Vikings is to control the clock and not let it get away from you. Even if Minnesota didn't have the 3 turnovers, like this Jacksonville game that they played last week should have been, a lot different than it really was when you look at time of possession. The Minnesota Vikings had 42 minutes and 19 seconds worth of possession to the Jacksonville Jaguars 17-41 last week. Even though they lose by 5, like if Sam Darnold doesn't have those turnovers, which he probably won't this week because the Titans continue to have a problem turning the ball over or getting turnovers. Like that is where it's going to be a big problem this week. So like I'm pretty high on their usage of Tony Pollard. I know when I talked about, the Vikings' ability to shut a lot of things down, which means you have to get creative and use designed runs. It certainly seems like that's a way that they can start to produce more in this offense and maybe open up some other options later in the game for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had some pretty nifty stuff against the Chargers, designed runs to Will Levis where they're showing a spread formation. Will Levis is in the shotgun, empty backfield, receivers lined up out wide. They motion somebody across. It looks like a pass. The Chargers played it like a pass, but once the ball is snapped, they pull the right guard and the right tackle, and it's a designed run, and Will Levis makes the read. It looks like there might have been an option to throw the ball, but he keeps it and he runs, and the Chargers weren't prepared for it, and it was a big gain. Like, it made me wonder, okay, what else is in Brian Callahan's bag in terms of these designed runs for Will Levis? Do you want to just empty the clip in a game like this against the Vikings where you're just doing every creative run out of your playbook to just try and generate some semblance of offense and really just kind of slow the game down a little bit and not necessarily like control the clock or anything like that, but just possess the ball and just really perform on schedule, on time, in a rhythm and that sort of thing, because I do think that's something that this team can build upon. And I think as you continue to run the ball effectively, creatively, you catch the defense off guard, and that's when you take your shots. Like, that might be the path to success if they're going to have any against this Minnesota Vikings defense. But I tend to agree with Ed. Like this might just have to be a 40 carry kind of game, and you're going to have to get everybody involved. Like maybe more of these designed runs with Calvin Ridley coming out of the backfield. Like it's to me, this is probably the key to keeping this game competitive, is the ability to run the ball and a commitment to doing it creatively.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And if they have to do it through the air, I do want to. The last thing I want to say about this game and what I'm looking forward to in the Titans versus Vikings game is the kind of emergence of Calvin Ridley
Sure.
inserting himself as the alpha wide receiver in this offense. And so I wrote about that over on Stacking the Inbox earlier today. That is a free piece, by the way. If you guys want to come over and see what we're all about over at Stacking the Inbox, give us a subscription over there. We're giving you guys stuff like that every single week, even in the lost season. But I wrote a lot about how it feels like since Calvin Ridley's sort of, his choice words after an Indianapolis game where he gets targeted like 6 out of 8 times in the second half, doesn't catch a ball. It seems like things have flipped the script there for this Titans team and Calvin Ridley. And you look at what Calvin Ridley, and I talked to Easton Freeze last week when he was on here last Friday about, like, this may be a hot take, but like the Titans offense may have gotten better by subtracting DeAndre Hopkins out of it, and not because DeAndre Hopkins is a bad wide receiver or anything like that. He's shown that he's already shown in Kansas City that he's still that guy, but more so it feels like we keep hearing from the Nick Holtz and Brian Callahan, feels like they just simply didn't know what to do with this wide receiver room. We keep hearing them talk about excuses. Well, we wanted to get Calvin Ridley involved, but we have D-Hop and Burks, and we were trying things out and things like that. And it really feels like first of all, the Burks injury kind of takes care of that problem, which I think they wanted to try to use him, and they were trying to use him, and it wasn't working, and they were kind of bashing their heads against the wall until he was simply out of the picture. So now they're forced to do better things like play NWI more, and then kind of getting NWI, or not NWI, into this Alpha X role since the departure of DeAndre Hopkins. It's made all the difference. And so this week, you're going to get a matchup of 2 alpha wide receivers who are playing some of the best ball of their season so far in Calvin Ridley and Justin Jefferson. And if you think that is a wild accusation, just listen to what they've done over the past 3 weeks. In weeks 8 through 10, in these past 3 weeks, Calvin Ridley and Justin Jefferson are tied for the most receiving yards over those past 3 weeks, both having 20 receptions for 300 yards in those games. Calvin Ridley has 2 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson has none over that span. And Calvin Ridley's longest reception is 6 more yards than Justin Jefferson's, with a 47 yard reception to Justin Jefferson's 41. Out of every receiver in the league right now, they're tied for second over that span. Just trailing behind Jamar Chase and his absolutely insanity performance on Thursday Night Football. But they're ahead of guys like Travis Kelce, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Darnell Mooney, like all these guys who have had a lot of good spans over the past 3 weeks. And you look at the most receptions, they're also tied for 9th each. So they've been top 10 in the league over the last 3 weeks in receptions and receiving yards. But not just there, like Calvin Ridley's making it count with his yards. You look at what he's done on first downs or most receptions for first downs in weeks 8 through 10. Justin Jefferson has 20 receptions, 15 of those being receiving first downs, and Calvin Ridley has 20 receptions, 14 of those being for first down. He's tied with CeeDee Lamb, 1 shy of Justin Jefferson, but he's also up there with guys like Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce. Like, these are the guys who are being the chain movers for their team right now. And it's wild to see the difference in what they've been able to do with Calvin Ridley over the past couple weeks. And it's it's not like they've changed a lot. They've really subtracted from what they're doing with Calvin Ridley. In weeks 1 through 6, Ridley's production lagged due to the sheer amount of players the Titans rolled out on any given drive. When you look at the data over those weeks, Ridley was only commanding an 18.7% target share, with 25.4% of his targets coming on the first read. And then you come off the frustrating matchup against Indianapolis, where kind of the Titans need to make a philosophical shift towards a frustrated receiver that you paid $50 million guaranteed to. Calvin Ridley has reaped the rewards and has a monstrous 34% target share, and he's seen a 40.8% first read target share over the last 3 games. Like, that is incredible usage by this team. And so I think that, like, we'll talk about this in a second, but Stoney, it just feels like the addition by subtraction has made such a difference for this team.
Yeah, and all I have to go off of is just reckless speculation here. But my theory is that it wasn't like, oh, we have to keep all these other wide receivers happy. We have to spread the ball around because that's harder to defend. It struck me the way the offense operated in the early weeks of the season. It struck me as a staff and players in offense as a group kind of trying to evaluate, trying to figure out what each of these guys does well. And the only way that you're going to figure that out is through live game reps. And so they're doing all this stuff that's not necessarily working. It looks a little wonky. It looks a little clunky. And then Hopkins is traded. Burks goes to IR. And it allowed this coaching staff to really streamline their top playmaker and their explosive wide receiver in Calvin Ridley. And I think kind of cleaning up some of that mental clutter in distributing the ball and that sort of thing, and just focusing on the guy that can make the big plays, understanding that now you figured out you've got a pretty reliable security blanket as a plan B in NWI. I think you've seen this offense, this passing game specifically, take a major step forward because of the streamlining of that. So I don't think it's necessarily, my guess anyway, is not like, oh, they were worried about DeAndre Hopkins' feelings or something. I think it's just more of like, we got to figure out what these guys can do. And now they've gotten to a point where they figured out, okay, Calvin Ridley's really good at being the top dog in this offense, so let's lean into it. By the way, I would also say, I came on this show throughout the early onset of the season, game after game. I'm like, guys are getting open. The ball's just not getting to them. There's a case of that where, like, you can watch the early games and you can see Calvin Ridley separating. The average number yards of separation was above league average in those first few weeks. The ball just wasn't getting to him. So now what you're seeing is they're making a concerted effort to get the ball to him in those situations, and those plays are connecting. So I know the fan base wanted to kind of, dance on Calvin Ridley's grave earlier on. We paid him all this money and he's not producing. I don't really hold that lack of production against Calvin Ridley, because there were plays to be made where he was wide open and the ball just didn't go his way. So it kind of felt like in the moment watching that, it's like, man, this is really frustrating. But if he keeps this up, eventually those plays are going to be made. And now what we're seeing is those plays are being made.
Yeah, and it feels definitely like a shift when you talk about the first read target share. Like, it feels more like, Will, just look to your first read, and if you see that separation, you see him coming open, like, let's execute. Let's not start. Let's not dance around this anymore. And so that's something I asked Nick Holtz about in his press conference yesterday, and here's what he had to say on the matter, going on a few tangents, but I think we got there eventually.
I like tangents.
We've been trying the whole season to get Calvin involved early, and sometimes they take it away, and sometimes they give us some unscouted looks. It's kind of worked out these last couple of games, and the just kind of consistency in the offense has been going, where we've been able to get him the ball. And I feel like I've kind of started talking on a tangent on your question, but go back one more time.
Just with the first read target share has kind of, you've been trying to get him the ball as fast as possible early and often there. you talk about kind of being more of a progression-based offense,
Yep.
but we've kind of seen that first read try to get Will kind of more in rhythm. Is that kind of the plan?
Absolutely. I think, especially with where we are on our protection-wise and things like that, we want to get the ball out, especially on first and second down. So being able to get them those targets on first and second down early is really important for us, whether it's we throw them some screens, we throw them some bubbles, then we throw them some quick game, and then we've got some shots down the field that are protected. So each week we've kind of been able to vary it up to get him involved. And if they take him away, we feel like we've got good options with all the other guys too. So it's been nice to kind of start games faster for a change.
I do like that last bit. It's nice to start games faster for a change, meaning that I get a lot of your line of thinking. It really feels like this was an offense that maybe had too many things going on and didn't know exactly what it wanted to be. And whether you can take that two ways. You can take it the one way of, this is a coach who is in over his head. Like they why didn't they have this figured out? Or you can take it the other way of like, this is a entirely new staff trying to figure everything out together. And so, but I think at the end of the day, like getting him going like this, if they can continue that, especially in this game against the Minnesota Vikings, who, for as good as their front line and linebacking core has been, this is a susceptible cornerback and secondary group that they're playing this week. They can be beat pretty easily. We've seen it over and over again over the past couple of weeks. And so I do think that, continuing to get Will time on task and start fast with this offense is definitely going to be a big part of it. All right, Stoney, anything else on this game before we move on to our best bets for this week?
Yeah, I want to talk about this defense a little bit, going back to Nick Holtz's clip from our Blade. One of the notes that I wrote down was complementary unit. And I know we talk about complementary football in terms of how the offense, the defense, the special teams play in conjunction with one another, but specifically within the defense, the way the pass rush is married to coverage, the way they're disciplined, they're well coached. It is like the perfect marriage of all of those things together that makes this the best defense in football. I jotted down eye discipline as the key to how this whole thing functions. Really smart safeties that can play multiple positions for Flores' defense, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in terms of alignment, guys showing rush, dropping into coverage, vice versa, pressure coming from anywhere on the field that creates turnovers. And I think it's a pretty daunting task to slow this defense down to make plays on it. But at the end of the day, if you want a couple of words of encouragement, if you see a good game from Will Levis in this contest on Sunday, that is going to be a massive sign of progress. And then we might, in that scenario, like you're talking about, the one timeline out of the 14 million in the Doctor Strange universe or whatever, if we see that come to fruition, we might be having a different conversation about Will Levis come next week. So there's your words of encouragement there. It's a great opportunity for Will to show some signs of progress, to get better at an issue that is clearly a weakness for him, and perform well and efficient within this offense. I think if that's what ends up happening in this game, you're going to be feeling pretty encouraged about his future, win, lose, or draw.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Ed in the comments here asks, Brownlee or Baker on Jefferson? I know they will have help, but curious who you would line up. Man, that's like asking, going up against a Ferrari. Do you want a Ford F-150? Like a RAV4? Like neither one is going to be exactly the answer here, I feel like, especially since we know that L'Jarius Sneed once again will miss his 5th game in a row.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation for another day. We'll have to see how he feels after this week once again. But I mean, I think you have to kind of rely on the aggressive press skills that Jarvis Brownlee has. Like, I think that's, he called yesterday in the locker room. He kind of thinks of L'Jarius Sneed as like a big brother mentor kind of guy in the locker room. And so I have to think like it's going to be Brownlee on Justin Jefferson. He's going to have the help of L'Jarius Sneed trying to teach his way through guarding a guy like Jefferson. But at the same time, like it's gonna rely on 2 or 3 guys to cover a guy like that, because you can only do so much. Like we said last week, if this pass rush can't get home on Sam Darnold, they're gonna have, if Justin Herbert had all the time in the world and can have Quentin Johnston, run basically 4 routes and 1 on that Kenneth Murray play to get a touchdown, Sam Darnold still just needs like half the amount of time for Justin Jefferson to get off the line and through that press man coverage to get open. So
yeah,
I think I'd go Brownlee though. Do you have thoughts?
It's a concerning matchup either way, no matter how you look at it. I tend to think, and this is something that is worth watching on Sunday, because I came to this show on Tuesday kind of critical of the defensive game planning against the Chargers, and I kind of wonder if they just keep playing the way that they've been playing. I would expect it to just be Brownlee, like one-on-one with Jefferson. We're just going to throw you in the deep end and see if you sink or swim kind of deal. But I wonder if there is any room for maybe putting Brownlee on the other receivers, and maybe you bracket Justin Jefferson with a Baker and Amani Hooker, Mike Brown, one of the safeties, whatever. And maybe you kind of double Jefferson and put Brownlee on someone else. I don't know. Conventional wisdom based off what we've seen from this unit so far this season probably indicates they're just gonna put Brownlee out there and run the defense the way that they've been running it before. Whether or not that's successful, oh boy, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one for sure. And so I do think at the end of the day, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. So, all right, Stoney, let us move on here to one of my favorite segments that we continue to do every week, even though it is a tough year for your boy and across the board. I read an article through Forbes earlier this week that just kind of talking about how much the public sides are winning this year against Vegas and a lot of sharp bettors. The trends back me up, which make me feel better every single week, but we have to bet through it, because that's what I owe to this show. And so this week we're bringing the best bet gauntlet back this week. I think me and Easton both went 1-4 last week. He might have beat me by 1 pick when we had our head-to-head. So it's not like he's doing much better than me either. But without further ado, with my first pick this week, I'm going with Pittsburgh +3. This is an automatic one, and if this one loses, there's nothing you can do about it, because you look at what's happened between this Pittsburgh team and this Ravens team over the last 20 years. The underdog in this series is 28-10-3 against the spread. That's good for 74%. In the regular season, when the line is 3 or more points, the underdog is 22-4-3 against the spread. The underdog is 15-2-1 since 2015, covering the spread by 5.7 points per game. And then in the regular season, the underdog is 23-6-3 against the spread when Mike Tomlin faces John Harbaugh. Listen, this is one that I picked both times last year and won on, and that was a team with Kenny Pickett going up against this Ravens team. Now you have Russell Wilson and this team looking a lot better than that team ever did. And so with that, this is just a no-brainer for me. You have to do it. It's a system play. You do it and you don't even think about it. I'm taking Pittsburgh +3 this week.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I just think flat out the Steelers are better than people give them credit for. And I think the Ravens, as fun as they've been to watch, I think there are still some issues there. So I would back that one with you, JT. For my first pick, I'm going out to the Rocky Mountains. We're going to go with the Denver Broncos, and I'm going to take them as 1.5-point favorites at home against the Atlanta Falcons. I think there is a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde going on with this Falcons team, but the Broncos, man, their defense has been legit this season, but what we're starting to see is this pairing of Bo Nix and Sean Payton kind of kicking it into another gear. Lately, they should have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs last week. Maybe you wonder if this is a letdown spot, but I like them playing at home, playing the style that they play, the sicko team of the season so far. I'm taking the Broncos -1.5 here.
Yeah, I don't hate that one at all. I know the sharp money is on your side this week, so I got to feel good about that. With my next pick here, taking the Green Bay Packers -5.5. This isn't a betting stat, but did you know that there is no there's no team, there's no player on the Bears active roster that has ever beaten the Green Bay Packers?
Whoa. That's crazy.
It's been a while since they've beaten the Green Bay Packers, and I don't think it's going to happen yet again this week. On extended rest, in preparation time. Matt LaFleur is 7-3 against the spread when favored by 4 points or more. And then how about this one for you? The Bears have been an incredible fade in divisional matchups the past few seasons, going a pathetic 8-21-1 against the spread versus the Lions, Packers, and Vikings since 2019. Listen, if you were on the Bears to cover as a divisional dog here over the past few seasons since 2019, you would, if you bet $100 on every game in those divisional matchups, you would lose $1,338 over that that span. That makes Chicago the least profitable team versus its own division in the NFL in that span. This is just another, they fire Shane Waldron. It's not really the same as a firing the head coach bump for me. I still think Caleb is, even with a new interim OC, I don't think it really brings the bump that you really need in that position. So I'm going to take Green Bay to keep it rolling here off the bye, -5.5 against the Chicago Bears.
That's another one I would back as well. Chicago's reeling right now. It looks like two teams heading in opposite directions, two ships passing in the middle of the night, if you will. I'm going to go to Buffalo, New York, and we're going to look at this Chiefs at Bills game. I'm going to take the over 46.5 on the point total. We're dodging the 47.5 point curse this week. We're going to take the over on 46.5. You get these two teams together, fireworks tend to follow. It's as simple as that for me, JT.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, and I'll follow that one up by saying in this game you should take Buffalo -2. Listen, I think this is a spot here where here's a stat for you. Which team this season has spent more time leading in games this year? The Kansas City Chiefs or the New Orleans Saints?
I have a feeling I know where this is going to go. If it's an unbelievable stat, I'm going to say the Saints.
The Saints have led more this season than the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're playing finally a good opponent who knows how to finish games and finish effectively. This is a team that, unlike the when Buffalo played the Ravens, this is a totally different scenario for this team. They get a lot of their back. They're getting a lot of their guys playing good football, unlike earlier in the season. And listen, Patrick Mahomes is only 4-3 straight up at when playing Josh Allen, especially in the regular season. This is a spot, I think, where he makes it 4-4. And I really just obviously you could see maybe the Chiefs putting Harrison Butker on IR as another sacrifice to the devil god for devil magic, blood magic, whatever you want to call it. And they're going to, whoever this kid they got off someone's practice squad, I think it was like the Saints or Panthers, someone's practice squad, like this kid's going to hit like a 60-yarder to win the game. And the devil magic lives on, but I just don't want to believe it. And I'm going to take Buffalo -2 in this one.
Yeah, that's another one I'm backing you on there. I think Buffalo is clearly the better team right now. Kansas City, very fortunate to still be undefeated. I'm going to go to New England, and this looks like a pretty disgusting game. I'm going to back the Rams here as 4.5 point favorites in Foxborough. I said all season, I don't necessarily think the Patriots are as bad as they look. And I don't know that the Rams have necessarily been as good as we've thought, but I look at this young defense for the Rams and how it's kind of coming together with some key pieces, and Jared Verse, Cam Kinchins is making play. I wasn't the biggest fan of him in the draft, but they have guys that are kind of coming into their own on defense. And to me, that is the key to stopping this, abysmal Patriots offense. I think it's going to be one of those situations where they may get up like 10-0 and just ride out a lead there. So I'm backing the Rams in this spot.
Yeah, I don't hate that one. That was one I was looking as well. And Kenneth says Vikings, I assume he means -6 as the favorite here. He says, staring you both in the face, who dares to take Levis? We talked about, Stoney, you had some words of encouragement there towards the end of the show saying that this could be the one universe where it goes in the Titans' favors. I'm here to tell you that it's not. I think the Vikings blow the Titans out this week. Minnesota -6. Listen, this is I can't bet. I'm going to try betting against the Titans now because I know this team so well, maybe betting against them. We'll see if this has the reverse effect and the Titans are actually going to keep it close this week. But the Titans were 3.5 point dogs against the second half spread last week versus the Chargers, and they lost by 4 in the second half. Will Levis dropped to 2-13 against the second half spread in his career, including his 0-13 second half against the spreads outside of Monday Night Football. This is a team that just simply under Will Levis cannot get it done, cannot make a comeback outside of that one time in Miami. Betting wise, I do think that this is the play here. I'm going to take Minnesota -6.
Yeah, I'm going to save my pick from that game for last. I just want to throw that out there. I'm going to back the Cowboys plus 7.5 against the Houston Texans. I think there's something clunky going on in Houston, and I just don't know that they're really built to be blowing teams out right now. They haven't gotten things together. This Dallas team is bad, but I just can't see. Maybe I'm just a hater. Maybe I'm just a hater on the Houston Texans, and I should just admit that and move on. But I just don't see this team beating anybody by more than a touchdown right now. Yeah.
All right. With my last pick this week here, I'm taking Cincinnati plus 1.5 here against this Chargers team, who I think, this is a Bengals team who I thought should have actually just kicked it and went to overtime. They could have had a chance to win that game last week, but this is a team that just continues to get incredibly lucky. I've seen a lot of reports that Justin Herbert has given up his key to what if he was on this team scenario city to Joe Burrow now because of how good he's playing. This is a team that I think, you look at Joe Burrow as a quarterback here, as a road dog. He is 14-6 in his career, and he has been covering the spread by more than 4 points per game. But as an underdog in night games, Burrow is 0-6 straight up, but 4-2 against the spread. So maybe something going against him there. However, I just like, this is a desperation spot for a Cincinnati team on a little bit of extended rest against this Chargers team to get right and keep themselves alive. I like getting T. Higgins back is big for them this week. So I'm going to like Cincinnati plus 1.5.
All right. For my final pick, I'm going to go back to Titans Vikings, and I'm just going to point something out to you guys.
Okay.
You can get Vikings minus 20.5, at least on FanDuel, at plus 600 odds. So that is, you bet $100, you win 600. I like the Vikings to win by 3 touchdowns. So I'm going to take that bet, JT.
All righty. Putting your money where your mouth is there on that one, saying that not only did the Vikings win, but they win big. To recap on our picks, I'm taking Pittsburgh plus 3, Green Bay minus 5.5, Buffalo minus 2, Cincinnati plus 1.5, and Minnesota to cover -6 in this Titans-Vikings game. Stoney, you are taking Denver minus 1.5 versus Atlanta, Rams minus 4.5 at New England, Dallas plus 7.5 versus Houston, the over in Chiefs and Bills at 46.5, and then doubling or tripling down, I should say, on the Vikings to cover a 20.5 point spread at Tennessee at plus 600 odds. It'll be interesting. I hope you get that one, because then maybe people will start to put some respect on our name. I like all of our picks this week.
I got the Lions one.
You did get the Lions one. Let's go 2 for 2.
Alternate spread minus 37.5. They won by 38.
Yeah, you are sharp when it comes to the extended point spreads here. Lewis says, who do you got in the fight tonight? We'll rehash that. I hope Mike Tyson wins, but who knows? We'll see.
I'm going Tyson. I'm just going to buy into it 100%.
Just enjoy the ride. And so if you're going to watch it tonight, remember to go out and go to Sinker's Beverages to get all of your good beverages needs tonight. Or if you're in the Hendersonville area, Bluegrass Beverages before the fight tonight. That's going to do it for the Hot Read podcast. Hope you enjoy your weekend and whatever this Titans-Vikings game may bring us. Until Tuesday, when we recap everything, this has been the Hot Read podcast. We will talk to you then. Have a good weekend.